G'day Aussie Gridiron fans, and welcome to the Gday Gridiron podcast, brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, Australia's home of NFL and local gridiron content. It is the flagship show for Week 7, the game previews that everybody loves to listen to and loves to listen to us waffle on with. We have 4 huge games to talk about this week. We've got both boys back in the studio with me. Nick is here. How you going, mate? We missed you on the overreactions the other night.
I did manage to catch the show from the other night, so it was quite good. Some good overreactions in there. Definitely the Ravens to go undefeated. That was huge.
That was huge. I assume that you were overreacting to the overreactions whilst it was going on.
I'm thinking, God, that means they're gonna have to go near undefeated in their division. But anyway. No,
how you doing?
Looking forward to this week's matchups. Club season's getting closer, so getting that itch again to starting to get back out on the field and play again.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. Always fingers crossed. And it'd be great to hear we got to get some local gridiron content out of Nick at some point, I reckon, too. What do you think, Brad?
Absolutely. He's one of the best linemen I've ever had. So, and he's great at getting the scoop on everything. So I would love to hear some local content.
Oh, we might have to tell Manjot to get him on the payroll or something. The old Aussie Gridiron Today action, eh?
I want to see Nick. I just want to see Nick, like peeking through the bushes with his, camera recording me.
His long lens.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what are we talking about? I've seen him in the shower. It's not that long. Sorry.
I'm gonna die. Don't do that to me. All right, as I mentioned, we have 4 massive games on the slate today to preview. Probably the biggest 4 matchups we've had collectively as a collection on a show so far this season. And I know we're only talking 6 weeks. It's a relatively small sample size in the podcast realm, but definitely 4 of the better and stronger lineups. So, boys, we should probably just jump straight into it because we've also got some other special stuff coming after that as well. So make sure you stick around after the previews for some fun stuff around then if you listen to this. So we should probably just jump into these games. What do you reckon?
Absolutely.
Sure. All right. Well, then let's kick off Week 7 with a huge divisional matchup in what is the hottest division in the NFL right now, and I am talking about the NFC North. This game, of course, is Lions at Vikings. The Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings set to be a highly competitive clash against 2 very top teams in the NFC North. Brad and I spoke about NFC North a little bit on the previous show. The fact that the entire division is performing so well this season. Lions are currently holding 4-1. The Vikings looking to maintain momentum and hit a potential 6-0 start for the first time in many seasons, and hopefully shake off some voodoo that come with those hot starts as well for the Vikings. Stakes are high as both teams vie for what could be the first place in a tightly contested division. Brad, let's kick it off with you. This matchup at US Bank Stadium in Minnesota is looking to be very good one on the cards for Week 7.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a huge one. If you're going to watch any game this week, well, we'll get to it later. But there's a ton of good games, but this is one of them. Absolutely, this is one of them you want to see. I'm really excited to see what the Vikings are going to do against a quality team. I feel like this is going to be the litmus test that kind of determines, are they the legitimate 5-0? I mean, obviously they're a legitimate team, but are they going to be right up there with that Super Bowl contenders? And I think a lot of it's going to depend on the health of Aaron Jones. I don't know. Do you guys know what's happening with him? Is he going to play? Is because last I heard he had a hip injury and he was questionable.
Yeah, he was questionable today when recording, so he should be playing. Everyone's been saying that he's going to play. That they're just looking after the hip injury, so he's just limited time at practice. But it looks like he will be fine.
Okay,
come game time.
They made a trade for Cam Akers this week, didn't they?
Yeah,
Brought him in.
Yes.
and that's more about that seems to be more about depth, just to
Yep.
have another running back who knows the KOC system intimately and can just perform as that RB2 a little bit better than some of the other guys like Ty Chandler have been doing. Ty Chandler's been great, but at the moment he has been functioning as the number one returner. And then RB2. And yeah, I think it's obvious that he's not grasping a lot of the offensive concepts that they want to use when they want to give AJ a rest, basically.
It's big this week. I'll give you a stat. I will give you a stat. So
Stat me up, Nick.
the NFC North so far has a combined 17-5 record this season. So that works out to a win percentage of 77.3%. So that is actually the highest win percentage for a division through the first 6 weeks since the 1970 merger. So, and I'll add this too, there's only been one divisional game so far. So out of that 17-5, obviously there's been one loss, which was Green Bay to Minnesota. So the best thing is, for someone that doesn't have any skin in this division, there's many more divisions to come, and everyone's going to beat up on each other. But that's okay. It's really crucial, as you said, Brad. It is a bit of a litmus test, and I think that if I don't know about you, Ian, but if I was a Vikings fan after that bye, after such a good start, I probably would have preferred to play a bit more of a softer team after the bye, just to make sure everything's running smoothly. There's no rust or anything. Being thrown into literally Lions' Den, no pun intended, to play Detroit this week. So without Aiden Hutchinson, how do they fare this week? Because both teams, not just Detroit, both teams have been quite good run defensively. So how are Detroit going to get pressure on Sam Darnold this week, Brad?
Yeah, I think that's the key, is the pressure, like what you mentioned. And I think they're going to have to go back to the old style defense. They had a big upgrade just across the board this season, and so they didn't have to resort to blitzing so much. And I think that's what you're going to see. In order to generate that pressure, you're going to see a lot more blitzing, which is not what they want to do, but it's probably going to be what they need to do. So it's going to come down to, can Minnesota protect? Because Detroit will do everything they can to try and manufacture that pressure.
The big matchup, obviously, is Jared Goff, and the Lions' offense has been humming the last couple of weeks. They've been performing exceptionally. Jared Goff seems to be hitting that tick that that spot that he was at the end of last season too, where we saw them playing so well going into the playoffs and through the playoffs as well. The big matchup is obviously that versus the Brian Flores defense, which has been absolutely insane for the Vikings this year, and definitely the game winner that it should be, and that we all want it to be. So that for me is going to be the very interesting part. Is actually going to be the Vikings D versus the Lions O. And just sort of seeing how that goes,
especially that like you said, that rushing defense for the Vikings, because it's unreal.
Yeah, and David Montgomery he obviously got a contract last week as well, contract upgrade. So he's been huge for the Lions the last couple of weeks, almost automatic with touchdowns and yardage as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how that matches up. It just so every storyline on both sides of the ball for both teams just seems to marry up to give us a good game. Nick, I guess you said, as a Vikings fan, would I be worried just playing a better team coming out of the bye? I think it helps a little that it's a home game. I think that gives that back to us as well. You're a bit more comfortable because you're not automatically on the road straight after a bye. So for Minnesota, it's starting to get cold up there in the north. So you're indoors, you're at home, you're in your own bed, you're coming into work. All those sort of things rather than having to travel away or be like Tampa Bay last week where they had to relocate their entire families, pets, and everything on the road. So, I think you get that back. There's a little bit of another week planning for this team that is doing really well. And this is the team that you want to beat. Like, this is the team that you absolutely have to beat in this division. Yes, needed to beat the Packers. Got the Packers early. That's an advantage. So you could play them earlier in the year. You get over them early in the year. But you knew coming into this season that if you really wanted to win this division, you need to beat up on the Lions. You absolutely have to do it. So I think I love this matchup. And I love this every year. These divisional matchups in the North as a Vikings fan. Always great rivalries. Always great games, no matter how badly or how good any of the teams are doing. Even in previous seasons where the Vikings were doing great, Vikings-Bears games were hot games as well. So love it. So I'm really into this.
Mm-hmm.
I might even get up at 4 a.m.
To be fair, though, I will say this about the Lions. The Vikings had the week off, but so did the Lions too. They only played a quarter last week, and they went home quite early. So
dig in that knife, Nick. Dig in that knife.
That's right. I'm preparing. I'm preparing because they soon come to us. So
I want to see if all those trick plays, if the hook and ladder. If the hook and ladder play comes out this week against, whether they were just practicing. It seemed like they were just practicing, so they were just throwing out anything, see what they could do.
You guys have no shame. no respect.
You're a Cowboys fan, as if it wouldn't happen the other way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Now, Ben Johnson is just advertising to be the next head coach of the Cowboys, and frankly, I'd take him right now.
I love that thought that you threw out the other day, Brad, and it had me thinking further today as well when I was listening back to the show, because I've been doing that lately, is listening back to the show once it's come out, just to make sure I haven't beefed up any of the production work. But yeah, I had that further thought that over the last few weeks, like the teams that the Cowboys have been playing, that have been sort of beating up on them, it's like the OCs have been auditioning for the role.
Absolutely.
And just say, "Hey Jerry, look at me." Anyway, we don't want to talk too much Cowboys.
Yeah.
We really don't want to talk too much Cowboys today.
We do not.
So. All right, boys. Vikings are favoured -2.5. The under-over total right now is sitting at 50, right on 50. What are we feeling? -2.5 is the home advantage, but this is almost a pick'em game.
Well, it's a pick'em game by the line, but in my mind, it's not a pick'em game, and until Minnesota can beat this top tier level team like Detroit, and maybe I have a little recency bias because of how bad they just spank the Cowboys and embarrass them. I think 2.5, even with Aiden Hutchinson gone, is I just see the Lions winning this one outright. So I'm taking the Lions on this one. It's not quite sell your car, but it's still I'm heavy Lions.
Yeah, Brad's driving a new Ferrari this week.
It's only sell your push bike for that.
Sell your push bike. Nick, what are you feeling, Nick?
2.5.
I'm more interested in that. That 50 total for me is really interesting.
Yeah, I reckon it gets to the 50 because I think the Vikings are going to be able. I think the difference is going to be that the Vikings will be able to run the ball. I think better than what they have before.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel
I
like it's
do.
going to be a scoreathon too. I feel like it's going to be one side scores, the other side's going
Yeah.
to have to score. One side scores again. Like it's just going to be back and forth, which that
Because
total is going to go through the roof.
and I think a lot of what will contribute to that is, both teams are great against, the run, but they're also not great against the pass on both sides. And particularly without Hutchison this week, I know we spoke about it before, but I think it is going to be a big loss because I think Donald's going to have time. They're going to be able to run the ball. Even though the Lions have won 4 of the last 5 matchups against the Vikings, I'm still going to take Minnesota, but I will take the points with the Lions. So it is going to be a close game.
Okay. I mean, I'm taking the Vikings. We already established that weeks ago that I need to start betting with my team all the time. So I'm going to do that for sure. If anything, like I said, I'm just interested in that total. I think that total is going to get blown out of the water if this becomes the game that we all think it should be, and not some kind of Jets Denver's 10-9 kind of nonsense game. Yeah. All right, let's move on to second game, and it features another NFC North rival, and that is the Packers, who are welcoming the Houston Texans to Green Bay. Matchup features 2 very contrasting trajectories for these teams. The Texans are currently leading AFC South with a record of 5-1, while the Packers sit 4-2 and are looking to improve. Obviously, they're standing in the NFC North to keep up with the 2 teams we've just been talking about, because whichever way that game goes, this game is going to have to go just the same. Packers are currently favoured to win this game, Nick, and I think statistically, though, you would have to be going a little bit more Texans just because of the way their offense has been playing.
Yeah, I'm surprised that. I mean, in a way, because it is in Green Bay, I'm sort of not surprised that they do have the line go in their favour.
It's cold and outdoors, mate.
Yeah, I think with the Texans, like you said, with their passing attack, even without Collins, they've still got options there. They've got still Diggs, Tank Dell. Even Dalton Schultz can play a role. Mixon's come back. He had a great game last week. So I think that's going to be crucial because I don't think the Packers' defense is that great. On the flip side, though, the Packers have played well recently. They smashed Arizona last week. Got past the Rams as well. I just think with the Texans, though, I think their ability to be able to pass the ball so well and be able to run the ball so well is going to be detrimental for the Packers, because I don't think the Packers defensively is as good as what Houston will be. So I see the offenses be quite both effective, but I think Houston's defense is what's going to come through a lot better, because they're quite good against the pass statistically this year, Houston, and a lot of that does come down to D'Amico Ryans schematically. So I'm interested to see, is Josh Jacobs going to get into this game with the Packers? I think they're going to have to if they're going to be a chance to win this game.
I'm a little bit more of a fan of the Packers defense and their secondary, because they've got 9 picks on the season already, and they lead the NFL in 17 takeaways. I'm actually not that. I know it sounds crazy, but Texans are 5-1, but I don't feel like they're a 5-1 team. I feel like they're a little overrated, at least the way they've been playing. So to me, and the biggest stat is their point differential is they're only +8 on their points. So, and 4 of those 5 wins have been by 6 points or fewer. So and generally speaking, when you have close games like that, it does balance out. So it's not always in their favor. But and I think Stroud's playing well. I mean, you got to give it to him. But without Collins there, I think that is going to be a huge detriment, a huge loss. So I'm not nearly as high on Houston on this. So to me personally, I agree with the spread. I would almost make it a 3 if I was setting the lines, but obviously, yeah, what do I know? But I think it's that Green Bay defense is underrated. I think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. And it should be a close game no matter what, though. But I'm giving the slight edge to Green Bay.
The other interesting thing with the injuries is that Joe Mixon is still on the Texans injury report as well.
Is he really?
Yeah, for his ankle. And he was limited practice during the week. Robert Woods was not a participant. He's got a foot injury, so he's wide receiver Robert Woods. So they're doing it tough in all areas. They're all out, they're out some depth players around the defensive line as well, which is a little bit tough. And Green Bay aren't adverse to this either. They've got Dontavian Wicks has been out with a shoulder injury. Christian Watson's been out with an ankle. Jaden Reed out with an ankle. All three wide receivers, all limited practice.
I think Jair Alexander has been limited through the week as well. So
Yes, he has, and I think from what I've heard is he's least likely to play.
Okay.
But yeah,
so that opens up. Yeah, so that opens up, Diggs even more, and even Tank Dell. Because
it's weird. It's weird how little they've been using Diggs with Collins out. I feel.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's an interesting thing just how much Collins takes. The removal of Collins from that offense takes away from the Texans' offense as a whole.
Yeah, you don't have that. He's a freak, big bodied speedster, who can take the top off and really kind of stretch those defenses. So yeah, it is kind of bizarre just how their offense has changed.
But I think it's because their run game worked so well last week, Houston, that do they really need to throw it as much? And really, because they blew the Patriots out, they got out early, and that was really it. So, yeah.
Well, and also, is Tunstall out, the tackle, Houston's tackle, or?
He is. He's on the report. Yes.
Okay, because if he's out, that to me that's a huge question mark. I'll admit I don't know who their backups are, so but it's and he hasn't had the greatest season to begin with anyway. But no matter what, it's going to be a downgrade if he's not there. So it's and Green Bay has such a balanced offense that I think it could give Houston some fits.
I'm odd on this game. I really want to be on the Texans. Everything in me from the beginning of the season would say Texans at this game right now. But the way that the Texans are on injuries, the way that they've been playing, which has been good on offense, but I don't think it's to the standard that they would expect from themselves. Their defense is really good. So it is almost a pick 'em game, but I sort of lean towards Green Bay at home, and they seem to just be able to get it done with more guys. It's just they share it around, they share the load around, and it just sort of gets to the end point where it needs to be. And I think that they will also be saying we need to win this game just to keep our record up there with the others. Because of the one divisional loss that they've actually had. So I think they need to do that as well. The line is 2.5 to the Packers, as we've said. Totals at 47.5. I think I'm leaning Packers. I don't know about that total, though. I would almost be an under on that total.
I mean, either way on the total. But I'm definitely leaning Packers on this one.
All right, I'll stand on the island. I'll take the points. I'll take the points with the Texans.
Someone's got to, Nick. Someone's got to.
Yeah, I do get what you guys are saying. I do agree with Brad a little bit that they don't feel like they're a team that's only lost one game and that are 5-1. But I mean, to be honest, the Packers have beaten the the Cardinals, the Titans, all those sort of teams. So
Yeah, you're right.
they haven't been that great either. The Rams with no one. So
Yeah.
I mean, the Texans have had some gimmies as well, but now give me the Texans. I think they're just a little bit more solid all round, particularly on defense and even up front too.
Righto, moving on. Matchup number 3 for the week. The Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs, who are 5-0, travel to the West Coast, to take on the San Francisco 49ers, who are currently sitting at 3-3 in a highly anticipated Super Bowl rematch. The Chiefs come into this game after a bye week. Brad, we all know how the Chiefs and Andy Reid really play after coming off a bye. We all know that they are incredibly strong, and to go into San Francisco against a team that has not had the greatest of momentum so far is looking like a very favourable matchup for the Kansas City Chiefs in this three-peat season.
It's a tough matchup because obviously Patrick Mahomes has not been playing like his typical MVP self, but I think that's a lot more of a product of his receivers, and he doesn't have a really a quality number one back. So this game, you're seeing some high-powered teams, some heavyweights going at it against each other, but I just think San Francisco is going to be hungry, and they are going to want to make a statement, I feel like, for this game. Now, exactly, you can't count Andy Reid out. He's coming off the bye. Everybody knows his record. It's absolutely insane. But the Niners are just they're playing so well. In terms of I'll let Nick speak more on it, but just having their wide receivers are now just clicking. They're so solid, especially with Kittle, the way he's been playing. And it seems like they can do no wrong in the running game in terms of who they put back there. So and like I say, the Chiefs are they're ranked like I think the bottom 5 in the NFL for rushing. So and until they can get a good quality running back there, it's hurting them.
Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, Brad, but put it this way. Whatever you put on the car last week, do it again with the Chiefs, with the line. Listen, put it this way.
Double down on the car, Brad.
Double down on the car. We're going to quadruple it. From last week to next week.
Go out tonight, today, tomorrow. Take the deposit off the Ferrari because we are going full Bugatti. We are going Veyron. We are going Aston Martin. Forget about it.
You had some cheap Beamer last week. You've gone to the Merc. Now you're going to go into Lamborghini, Ferrari section. This is what we're doing.
Talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking here.
You might be allowed to paint that wall Cowboys blue, Brad, if this one pulls off.
Hey,
absolutely.
I'll tell you what. Do you know what Patrick Mahomes' record against the spread is after a bye? I want you to guess what it is.
Oh, it'd be insane because their record after a bye is insane just to start with.
Against the spread, it's 11-1-1. 10-3 head-to-head as an underdog. 11-1-1 as an underdog.
Can you believe? It stuns me that they are underdogs so far in this game.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. When I saw that,
plus 1.5 to the Chiefs.
I have never in my life placed a faster bet. Never in my life placed a faster bet. Listen, I cannot understand why they're the underdogs, right? We struggle against quarterbacks that move around. Hence, Kyler Murray. 2 weeks ago. Oh, my God. Hufanga's not playing. Dre Greenlaw's not playing. We've got injuries all on our defense. It doesn't matter if they don't have receivers. Patrick Mahomes against us, against defenses that have been better in the past. You know what he averaged? He's played us 4 times. He averages 370 yards against us.
Average. Wow.
Average. Averages.
Average.
I'm not worried about who they don't have. I'm worried about who we don't have because their offense may not be as good. Although I think maybe it's about the same as what it was last year, considering with the injuries. Our defense is far worse. It is far worse. And I think without McCaffrey is a big thing. As opposed to last year. I would be very surprised if we do win this game. I think, how the Chiefs are underdogs, I don't know. With their, I don't think I see Purdy playing a bad game, and I don't think I see us having a lot of troubles offensively. Although I think the Chiefs' defense will be quite good. It's probably a good game for the over in this bet. But I think offensively, they're just going to give us so many troubles. And you think on the surface, they don't really have receivers, this and that. But Andy Reid off a bye, Mahomes off a bye. Their record against us is just, I didn't even think twice.
I'll give you some other betting lines. So the Chiefs are currently on Sportsbet, just looking up now, $1.86 for plus 1.5. Big win, little wins by points. Chiefs 1-13 is paying $2.55. Chiefs 14 plus is paying $6.50. Oh boy, that is some juicy lines. Patrick Mahomes 3+ passing touchdowns, $4.50.
Wow, those are enticing odds.
Are they? They're just juicy, aren't they? It's just you look at that. They're not going to score on the ground, the Chiefs. So they're going to score through the air, and 3+ touchdowns for Mahomes against this team. Whew. As Nick's been saying, like they're just broken in some parts, in some spaces. Really, isn't it right, Nick?
Oh yeah, they
achieve so well in some bits, and then they're just broken in other parts that just don't get fixed.
Now I will say that even though when we do have the longest sort of breaks, so we had played the week before on the Thursday night game, we're still usually quite good, but
so you got the mini buys. The mini buy. Effect, yeah.
The mini buy, but we don't know what Mason, if he's going to get up. I don't think that matters. Running back is not a concern for me.
No, running back is not a concern for the 49ers.
Not a concern.
Just you got some homeless dude off the street this week, and he's going to do 70+ easy.
Yeah, I think it's going to be honest prediction. In the game in its totality, I think both quarterbacks are going to play quite well, but I think with how our defense is compared to how theirs is, we've got quite a lot of gaps. So we don't defend the passes. Don't defend the passes well, but don't defend the run as well in the last sort of, I'd say, almost 12 months. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs will be able to get a run game going, even with, I don't know, Kareem Hunt or Carson Steele. So
Kareem Hunt is back this game. It'll be interesting.
Get the line. Take the points with the Chiefs. And absolutely go for it. That's my recommendation, and it is a spoiler to one of my picks later on.
Are we saying all three of us here are taking the Chiefs in this game?
I'm on the fence, to be honest with you. You guys are swaying me a little bit, especially because I trust Nick's analysis of his favorite team. So yeah.
John would be trying to play the fence here. He'd be trying to put the reverse jinx on, and
he's not Manjot. He's not doing the reverse jinx.
Manjot would be all reverse jinx.
It's too much thinking going into
mental arithmetic and gymnastics. Really,
too many mental gymnastics. Just this is the game. That's how I see it.
Yeah. No, I think, but you guys have convinced me. So I'm going to go Chiefs.
We're all on the Chiefs. It's the Gday Gridiron Chiefs special. And stick those juicy betting lines because they are going to win somebody some money this week. That's for sure. I don't know if that's going to come. Any of that's going to come up in our best bet segment. Definitely not. I don't have a Chiefs stuff. So whether you two do, we'll remain to see. So let's move on. Fourth and final game that we're previewing for this week. And as I said, stick around because there is some other stuff to discuss after these games we've got for you. And it is prime time. We're going to the weird prime time slot for this one. The weird Monday night matchup. It's not necessarily prime time. It's like Wheel of Fortune time. And it is the Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both of them enter this matchup with a 4-2 record, showcasing a lot of competitive play in the NFL so far this season, and surprisingly, out of both teams, considering how they've gone to get to 4-2, it has surprised both of us. Ravens have been on a 4-game winning streak after starting the season 0-2, demonstrating some pretty strong performances led by Lamar Jackson and, of course, Derrick Henry. Conversely, the Bucs are looking to build on a recent success after a pretty damn dominant 50-odd burger that they dropped on the New Orleans Saints last week. Nick, how are you seeing this challenge for, I guess, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers shaping up?
I was going to say, I hope you were going to say the Buccaneers there, because I do think that's...
I was, because I actually think the Ravens have come on fairly strong.
Yeah, and I was more so going to point to, again, this is part of one of my picks for the best bet later on. Lamar Jackson's record against the NFC, 22-1. And I think a lot of that has contributed to the fact that no one in the NFC, will take out this year, but previously, because now Jaden Daniels is there, no one in the NFC has seen a player that can run as effectively and use the ball as efficiently as Lamar Jackson. And I think that's a big part of it. So I think the Bucs, a little bit similar to, I think a game that we had covered a few weeks ago where we said a team that may have seen a similar system. I think it was the Jets with the Vikings, where they had seen, how we play offensively. It's a bit similar to, the system with the Vikings with KOC. So I think the Bucs seeing the Commanders earlier in the year and seeing how Jane Daniels sort of operates might give them a few hints at what they can expect from, the Ravens. But obviously, how do you stop that? Plus Derrick Henry is a whole nother question. Both teams very good offensively on third downs and in the red zone, which is good statistics to have, particularly if you want to be, towards the pointy end of the season. It comes down to for me is, do the Bucs have enough to be able to uphold what the Ravens have defensively? The Ravens do have some sort of holes in terms of their passing defense, so that's probably where the troubles will be there. But I think more so I'll be highlighting Baltimore's rushing attack versus Tampa Bay's, sort of defense as a whole. How do you guys think, if Tampa was to win this game, obviously take out that Henry would have to have a bad game, but
I would be ecstatic, to be honest.
Yeah. But how would they go about, what's the best path in them to be able to win this game? Because how do you stop that dynamic duo?
It's got to be through the air. That's the only way that the Ravens, in my opinion, that Tampa Bay has a shot at winning this, is if Baker plays lights out. And guess what Baker's been doing? Playing lights out. So I think Tampa Bay does have a shot at this because the Ravens have given up so much yards through the air. It's unfortunately for Tampa Bay, it's the strengths and weaknesses don't match up well for them though. If Baker can get some get on a hot streak, if Tampa Bay can get some takeaways, then I could see the Bucs hanging tight in this game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a scoring fest, to be honest with you. So that's why I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in it. But if you think about it, so there's some interesting stats I've got. Derrick Henry He has 700 yards, 700 plus yards running. 400 of those have come after contact. Why that's significant is because the Bucks load the box. So we're talking about from tackle to tackle, from line of scrimmage to the linebacker, well, to a certain depth. They load the box more than any other team in the NFL. So because they know they can't stop the run any other way. And here they're going up against a team whose strength is the run. So it's a tall order for the Bucks to be able to do this. And Derrick Henry, we all know the guy's just a beast, and he's going to be running over people. The other one that's scary, the other strength weaknesses that's scary that favors the Ravens is Zay Flowers leads the league in separation. So when we talk about separation, we're talking about how far the receiver is from people around him, how much separation he has. And he has 4.1 yards average separation, which is huge in the NFL. That's huge. That's massive. The Bucks are second to last in sticking on their guys for pass defense. So you've got the best going against the worst in this dynamic. So I think, and a lot of that scheming, the way because the Ravens get that running game going so well that the teams have to crowd the box. What they do is they put Zay Flowers on these crossing routes, and it creates a real conflict for the linebackers and the safeties. And you're seeing Lamar is just making not perfect decisions, but he's making really good decisions on as a quarterback. And then he's so fast, he can pull it and run if he needs to. So it's just the only way I can see this working is, like I said earlier, is if Baker just gets on an absolute tear.
Yeah, it's Mayfield and Chris Godwin. That's the real key.
Yeah.
But this could be a game where we see a lot of feature in Mike Evans too, if he's healthy.
Yeah,
that is. So there'll be that. I think the big matchup for me though is how Todd Bowles' defense comes out and attacks that Ravens offense. How do you contain or try and contain Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson at the same time? Because you can contain one, but the other will always have a better game. So how do you try and contain them? His defenses haven't been really, and they've got to do it early. If they don't do it early, I think the game's going to get away from them, and that's going to be the big key here with that Tampa Bay defense, because the Ravens get out to hot starts. And yes, Todd Bowles is great at like he was against the Saints. The Saints had that 27-point second quarter to have the Bucks at 27-24 at one point. So, but Bowles comes out second half, and as he always does, he's sort of retooled the game, changed a few things, and then they dominate. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can wait till the second half against the Ravens, is what I'm getting at. So I think you have to do it from the beginning. So Bucks at home, 3.5-point underdogs. The line's at 49.5. I really don't know. This is a hard one for me because I really want the Bucks to do well here. I want the Bucks to win. That's what's in me. That's what my first instinct is going towards Tampa Bay, because it's at home, because I feel like Todd Bowles will have been looking at this game on the calendar weeks ago and hopefully seeing what Derrick Henry's doing and have an idea on how he might stop that. So I'm almost leaning Bucks, but at the moment I'm fence sitting.
Yeah. So when you say leaning Bucks, you're talking outright, right? You're not talking spread.
Yeah, I'd be probably leaning spread more than anything, just as a safe bet at 3.5. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think, like I said, the strengths weaknesses thing. I just think it's too much in Baltimore's favor, and I think Baker's been playing phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal in my opinion.
And he could still play phenomenal in this game and lose, Brad.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So, I'm going to go Baltimore on this one. I'm going Baltimore.
Yeah, and adding to that, Baker's got to have a good game. He's got to have a great game, and he still might not win. Whereas Lamar can have a sort of
Yeah.
iffy game, and
Yep.
they can still get it done. I think that's what sort of gets it over the line for me. Laying the points with Baltimore at 3.5 is because I think there's a lot more room for error with what the Ravens could do. At some point, I think there's going to be a correction with the Ravens in terms of they're going to be able to be better through the air defensively. Because they've been so bad, all of this year so far. I think there's going to be a correction with that at some point because, they've been so good defensively for, as long as, as I've been alive, the Ravens. So I think at some point it is going to turn, and I think this is probably a game where they're on the road. It is a game where they can sort of start to separate in their division. Pittsburgh have got a sort of pick 'em game against the Jets. With Devontae Adams, they probably get over the line, but it's sort of where they start to separate and get back into higher seedings with the AFC. So, I'm going to lay the points with Baltimore.
All right, that's 4 sensational games for Week 7 that we've just previewed. All of them must-watch TV in the NFL. So whether you can catch it live, sit on Red Zone, do whatever. Of course, you can also catch a bit of stuff, game day stuff, on some of our socials. We haven't been as active this year on game days as we have in previous years, but definitely there'll be a bit of talk. And you can check out our socials at the Aussie Gridiron Network Mothership. That is Linktree/Aussie Gridiron Network, where you'll find the links to all of our socials, and you'll see mainly the best bets stuff come up later in this week, or probably around Saturday, Sunday. All of our best bets on our socials, because it is now time for best bets for Week 7.
We're having a blunt, having a slap, just having some fun, and then making some scratch. It's the Gday Gridiron's bloody best bets.
It is Gday Gridiron's bloody best bets for Week 7. We've had a pretty good few weeks the last couple of weeks around here. It's been some pretty good weeks. Last week especially, we all hit definitely over the 50%. I missed out on one just because Chuba Hubbard didn't get a TD, but he smashed his line total. I know Brad had a pretty stellar week. Brad sold his car. Brad made a lot of money. Brad told you all to sell your cars, and I'm hoping nobody took his advice and sold their car, but I'm hoping everybody put down some money on Brad's sell your car bet for Week 6, and of course he went hard against his own team, Brad.
I did.
Hard.
I love going hard against my own team. It was so bad. And the only thing so I bet him to lose, obviously, and I bet him to get beat. I put even more money down to get him that they lose by over 14 points.
Did you really?
Yeah. And the only thing I'm kicking myself is there was a bet that it was going to be, it still wouldn't have paid off, but it was like if you got beat by over 40 points, then it was like 100 to 1 is what it was paying out at. And I was like, I should just put a couple bucks down on that. But they ended up, losing by 38, so it wouldn't have paid off anyway. But just the sheer thrill of it was, enticing. So I knew they were going to get blown out. I had to enjoy the game somehow, and so it was the bet. I to be honest with you, I didn't think they'd get beat that bad and look that pathetic, but they did. So, and then Jerry has a meltdown this week on the radio station. I don't know if you guys are.
He did. He had a meltdown.
What a dick! I mean, just absolute tosser. And for him to threaten to fire the guys, the stupid thing about it is he doesn't pay their salary. They're not
Yeah.
they don't work for Dallas Cowboys. They work for the radio station, and the radio station pays to have the Cowboys. So Jerry's not paying them anything, and for him, that just shows you his arrogance. And the sooner that guy goes, I never wish ill on anybody, but the sooner that guy goes, the better off the Cowboys are going to be. He's a great businessman, but the world's worst GM. So I'm sorry.
All right, well, Brad,
yeah.
how about we go with some bets? How about
Sorry.
how about we make it a bit more of a cheerier subject? Let's give us Brad's best for week 7.
Absolutely, love to do it. On a good note, so we already talked about a little bit the Ravens Bucks. I think it's going to be a high scoring affair. So I am actually taking the over. I hit the over last week, and I'm taking another over this week. So no more of this fun police stuff. That's 2 weeks in a row.
We've converted him, Nick.
2 weeks in a row where I've taken the over. So I think the Ravens Bucks is going to be high scoring. And so I'm taking the over there. The other one I've got, you want all three of them?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So the other one I've got is the Seahawks at the Falcons. I think the Seahawks have just had a brutal schedule on this. They've had like 3 games in 11 days. I think that they've had a little bit of a mini bye. And so they're getting 3 points at Atlanta. And I think Atlanta struggles to keep teams in check, the defense especially. So their third down conversion is absolutely awful, and Seattle is pretty decent at that. Geno Smith. So I'm taking the Seahawks at +3 against the Falcons. And which I know it sounds a little crazy, but I just think that they're getting disrespected. And then I am taking I already talked about it, Detroit at +1.5 against Minnesota. I really think they're gonna win that game.
All right, Nick's picks for this week. Nick, what have you got?
I'll tell you what, I will say, I did get screwed over with the fun police last week myself, going under with the Chargers.
Yeah, never picked that under.
I went against my gut feel, which was Jim Harbaugh is perfect against the spread against Sean Payton. I should have trusted my gut and went with that. They would have won it. Anyway, still got 2 out of 3 again.
I tell you what though, but just while we're on it, someone who had a bit of a gut feel last week in that game was actually Jim Harbaugh, who had to go to the medical tent for a heart flutter mid-game. Yeah. Apparently his heart was beating at over 250 beats per minute.
What?
Yeah.
That's intensity.
Insane.
That's insane.
Insane. I mean, we see that Jim Harbaugh gets psyched. He's a guy that is so positive. He gets so pumped up about his team, and he might have had one too many coffees before that game, maybe.
Well, I heard him say the interesting stat. This is the second time that's happened to him. And so he's 2-0 when his heart goes fluttering like that. So
2-0, is he really?
Yeah, so that's what he said. He says, "Well, I'm 2-0 when this happens, so keep it coming."
Well, you know what happened after that, though? Greg Roman came in and led a drive. I think it was a scoring drive, but it was a drive that lasted for 11 and a half minutes of game time. It was
fantastic.
Greg Roman basically led a drive that Jim Harbaugh could be proud of at that point.
Absolutely.
Took off 11 and a half minutes of game time and dominated. So
I love it.
And they still didn't get the under.
No, they still didn't get the under. All right, sorry, Nick. Go. Nick's picks for this week.
Bloody hell. How come his heart wasn't working when we played the Ravens in the Super Bowl? Anyway, don't worry about that. Let's move on. That's years ago. Okay, so as mentioned before, Kansas City underdogs. What the hell?
What the hell?
+1.5. +1.5. Mahomes, as previously mentioned, 11-1-1 against the spread as an underdog, and on top of that, 10-3 outright as well. So you could even go the outright. Next, I did have. Now, I had looked this up. Jacksonville is the team that usually does this, but the teams that usually do stay the extra week in London usually are quite good the next week. And considering they are playing the Patriots, I am going to go Jacksonville with the line, and it is quite big at 5.5, considering they've been struggling. But I do think, I think this is a game where they can sort of get back at, try and get something out of this season.
It's a Doug Peterson job saver.
It has
That's
to,
what
be.
that
It has
is.
to be.
I
It
bet
has
you.
to be.
I bet you they would have been fired him if they weren't if they were back in the States.
It have to be. Oh, maybe. Well, if they lose this, then it will definitely be gone.
Oh
Put it
yeah,
that way.
definitely be fired if they lose this. But
Definitely be gone.
if they were back in the States, I bet you they would have fired him.
No, I reckon so too, Brad. Just because they've got this game coming up, I reckon it would
Yeah.
have happened. I'm with you.
And I did see as well that during actually today, Drake May actually had an MRI on his knee.
Did he?
So I don't think it's nothing major, but it could be something that sort of, comes into effect into that game as well. I'm not sure. I would assume by now they're probably already in England or would be leaving tomorrow. So that could be a big thing if they haven't travelled yet already. And then finally, as previously mentioned, Lamar Jackson against the NFC, 22-1. So I'm not going to go the line. I am going to go with Baltimore 1-13 points, which I think is just paying over $2 at Tampa Bay. As we previously had mentioned, Lamar Jackson against the NFC with Derrick Henry. They're going to be able to run the ball, as Brad alluded to before. Tampa Bay, they're throwing bodies in the box. Are they necessarily a good run defense? Not particularly. And I think there's going to be a lot for them to be able to have over the top, particularly with Zay Flowers. So they're going to be able to pass the ball, and I think Baltimore's defense starts to really tighten up as they get going into the season. So hopefully, 3-0 this week. Finally got to get it. Keep getting 2-1s. 3-0 this week. Just got to summon it.
Well, the first of Ian's dogs for this week is actually King Henry, 90 plus on the ground. He's averaged 114 a game at this point through 6 weeks. So I'm going 90 plus and a TD because he's, as I mentioned on the previous show this week, he has a TD in every single game so far this season, and I expect that will continue against Tampa Bay. He's a very hard man to stop, old Derrick Henry. I've got a couple of small multis to go with for my last 2 picks. The first of which is a bit of a multi on the Commanders. Some small lines for a couple of Commanders players. Scary Terry, 60 plus and a TD. And Brian Robinson, the other B. Robinson, 50 plus and a TD as well. Both have been playing very, very well. Top of both receiving and rushing for the Commanders so far this season. They're only small lines for receptions and their rush, but I think they'll achieve them easily against a very lackluster opponent this week. So we're going with that. The third, though, I'm going for what I'm titling the wide receiver New Horizons multi this week.
This sounds like an insurance company.
It is. It's the two wide receivers who have moved to greener pastures this week. I'm putting both of them into a multi. I'm confident that both will play. I'm not confident that both will do a huge amount of work or see a huge amount of work, but surely they'd be thrown into... I mean, Devontae Adams, we know, is going to know that offense regardless. He's going to know everything that is going on in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense. So it's Devontae with 50-plus receiving yards. I reckon that's pretty easy. Amari Cooper with 40-plus receiving yards as well. So those two in a multi this week, I'm chucking that on. And hopefully both hit and not one line and not the other, which has been my luck with any of these multis so far this season. So that's bloody best bets for this week. Week 7. Good luck to everybody who is putting a bit of money down on any of the lines this week. As always, the betting information on this show, G'day Gridiron, is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only. There are absolutely no guarantees that any of the tips we provide will provide success, regardless of whether Brad says sell your car or not. All sports tips provided are our opinions, and punters are encouraged to use this information in order to form their own opinion about the outcome of any sporting event. Bet at your own risk and always consider what you could lose before placing that bet. All right, I teased it a little bit at the start. We sort of teased out that we had something else to finish up the show this week. And I know we're going to be running a little bit long, but that's okay. We've got the G'day Gridiron top 10s coming out this week. Top 10 QBs, so our top 10 ranked QBs for the season so far, top 10 wide receivers, and top 10 running backs. Brad, Nick, and I have split off, each one taking one of those, and we're going to be releasing that on our Instagram and our social media. So, as I said earlier, make sure you hit up the mothership Linktree / Aussie Gridiron Network to get all the links to our socials. Join there, follow, subscribe, do all of that stuff so that you can have a look at our complete top 10s. But we're going to throw out a few little nugs. We've had a look at each other's. We hadn't, until tonight, I hadn't seen what Brad and Nick had picked. They hadn't seen what I'd picked. We hadn't had a look at each other's. So there are some questions because there are a couple of juicy little bits and pieces here. Nick, I know that you are hankering to ask Brad about a couple of controversial ones in Brad's top 10 QBs.
Brad, Geno Smith. We're going to talk about it. Geno Smith.
Geno's
Cannot.
8th. Brad has Geno Smith ranked at 8th in the top 10.
Over Sam Darnold.
Over Sam Darnold. Over Kyler Murray.
I do. I am. I'll admit it. I am a big Geno Smith fan.
Seahawks fan. Seahawks.
He's wanting to change over.
No. I
Brad's boyhood team is coming back to haunt him.
I love the way. I know he's only got six touchdowns. He's got 6 interceptions. Okay.
So he's Jameis Winston. Is that what you're telling me?
He's on pace.
He's Jameis Winston in a Bruce Arians-led offense.
But the way he commands that offense and he throws he's so quick with his decisions, and he usually makes smart decisions. Sometimes he'll hold on to the ball, but usually he's just really quick with it, and he throws such a pretty deep ball. I love his overall game. I love how he's matured as a player, and he doesn't have elite talent, but I feel like he's playing. I feel like he's playing at almost an elite level. And it's that offensive line that is really letting him down. But I knew it would be a little bit of controversy there.
Elite is a strong word. Brad, do you feel like there's, without giving away where they are, because we really want people to check out these on the socials so they can take the list in as a whole, basically. Yeah. But do you feel like there were some QBs here that you're almost forced via some kind of weird peer pressure to include in a top 10 list, regardless of how they've actually been performing on the field?
I think there is that pressure. Yeah, absolutely. But I tried to do it independent of anybody else, and just in terms of just what I was thinking and that type of thing.
And I should point out too, which I didn't at the start, that these top 10 lists are based on the first 6 weeks of this season. Yeah, I for one, I don't know what the boys are like, but I don't believe in these nonsense media outlets that release a QB rankings every single week. And and it changes so much every week, or like even the power rankings for teams every week. It's just nonsense because you can have one game which can be totally different scheme, and then the next week you can be throwing the ball like 1,000 times. Yeah. 6 weeks is a good sample size. It's the third way through the season. We'll probably do the same thing in week 12, week 18 as well. But so it's the first 6 weeks. So do you feel like that, Brad? Like it was like you had to include some of these QBs?
Well, the guys I included, I felt like deserved it. But there always is that pressure of a little bit of name recognition, and you're putting guys there because of that. But I really tried to say, okay, how is this guy playing individually, especially given the context of their team and what's going on around them? And that's why, Nick, you saw me put Gino up there in that top 10. And I will just do as a little tease for the listeners, I didn't put Dak in the top 10. So, because the way he's playing, I don't even think I'd put him in the top half of the league, to be honest with you, really, truthfully. So, I struggled with some leaving some guys out.
Is there someone there that you sort of left that was a fringe top 10 player that you were struggling with just outside?
Yeah. So the list I originally sent with you guys, the one you're looking at, is not my most updated list. I've actually I've left Kyler Murray out of the top 10. So he is my number 11, to be honest with you. So I struggled. I went back and forth on him. So I don't have him on the top 10, just because a couple factors, but and I don't have Jared Goff in the top 10 either. So I've left some big names out of there, but it's just because I feel like guys are just playing lights out. They're carrying their team. They're doing everything that's asked of them. And even though Gino doesn't have the stats per se, I will admit he doesn't have the stats, but he's the guy that I feel like is doing a lot of the intangibles. And if Seattle didn't have him, it would just be UGLY. We ain't got no alibi. So.
I feel Nick and I were talking earlier, and we sort of said choosing wide receivers and running backs was it was a hard job because there's so many guys in sort of, if we tiered ranked them like we have done in the past, you'd have like one or two guys in a very top tier, and then everybody else would be sort of that mid tier. There'd be like a gap between the two. I feel like though QB rankings are always the most controversial and the hardest to put together because there's only 32 of these jobs. And they can be so wildly different week to week and even through these quarters and thirds of season. So I think it's the harder job. So well done, Brad. You're off the hook now. Have you got any questions? You've looked at Nick's wide receiver list and my running back list. Have you got any questions around those? Anything that sticks out to you in those two?
Right. So for me, I guess two players that I just would be curious to know, Nick, why you put them where you put them, or just what your thoughts are on them. Maybe that's a better was Lazard and Drake London. I don't necessarily disagree, especially with London, but I was just curious to know what your thinking was behind that.
I actually spoke to Ian before we had sort of started the show today, and there was about the first, I would say, 5 or 6 guys were sort of really easy to sort of, like, you knew sort of first 5 or 6 guys, and then after that it was sort of just really hard to be able to order guys in. So I don't like purely going off the stats, but it's sort of where I sort of lent to. Particularly with Lazard, I sort of flipped a coin between Lazard and Mike Evans. They're both sort of equal in receiving touchdowns, with 5 each. Drake London, I think, has been the clear number 1 target in Atlanta. and I think is a big part of why Kirk Cousins has still been able to come into some sort of rhythm this season.
Yeah.
They've been able to form quite a good, QB receiver relationship. So I was thinking potentially with London, is he maybe too high? Potentially with CD Lamb, he's sort of, I mean, you would know Brady sort of had some good games, and he sort of had some games where you haven't seen him. Metcalf sort of has been like that as well. I think he was 3 for 11 targets last week against us. So yeah, it was quite hard after about the first sort of 5 or 6 guys, in terms of where you would sort of rank them. You sort of get a feel of how the offense has really been. That's sort of what I took into consideration. So how good has the offense been overall, and how much of an importance have they been to that sort of offense? I suppose now with Lazard, he'll be the third option, which sort of kind of suits him with Adams coming in, because he's been such a reliable option for Aaron Rodgers. Wilson's had a lot of targets, hasn't quite been able to get underneath his legs underneath him in terms of having that good relationship with Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's just come down to Aaron Rodgers is going to trust his guys. And I think Lazard has, done a lot better than what people would think, and it showed with, his contribution with touchdowns.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Ian, do you mind if we move on to your running backs? Because I have a question for you.
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't want to give away your list or anything, but tell me why you put Bijan where you put him. You know I'm a Bijan lover, and I can't abide by this disrespect that you're giving my Bijan.
Just above Chuba Hubbard, to be honest.
Then if the way you said that, just above, that is not okay, Ian. That is not okay. The disrespect that's coming from you right now.
Well, okay. So running back wise, the way I feel about a running back is they're either the be all and end all of your offense, or they're a very small addition and a reprieve from your passing offense. So they're one or the other. They're either the biggest thing in there, or they're a tiny part of a larger cog. So, or a tiny cog in a larger machine is probably the better analogy, Ian. So that's kind of the way I think about it. So I was trying to find the guys that have been the big powerhouse and the thing that is leading and pushing their team. So obviously, I mean, there's going to be, everyone would already know this, and I would be insane not to do it. Derrick Henry, number one as the number one running back in the league. He's number one in nearly every single metric you can attribute to a running back so far this season. So he is number one, and that makes sense, and you can understand that because he's really carrying that whole side of the ball, and I don't think they're passing as much as they really would be if they didn't have Derrick Henry. So Bijan, on the other hand, though, he's played some good games and he's played well in games, but he's not the be all and end all of that offense. They do use him more than some other teams with a lot of passing. Like, let's say the Bengals don't do a lot of rushing; it's all passing, for instance. But the Falcons sort of they sort of try and 50-50 it a little bit at this point. And obviously he was better earlier in the season when Cousins was really trying to get a handle on just his new surroundings and a new team. So and he's been great in the last few weeks, but that's just where he is. So Chuba Hubbard, for example, though, where he really is in this list, and I feel like he deserves to be in this list, it's because we had the bump, we had the Andy Dalton bump in Carolina, where all of a sudden Andy Dalton was playing lights out as soon as they made the change at QB. And Chuba Hubbard came up within those same games. But now, Chuba Hubbard is still hitting 80-plus yards every single game and sometimes scoring TDs and really pushing that offense, even though Andy Dalton isn't really, he's sort of moved back, he's sort of regressed to the mean. So I feel like he needs to be in there, and that's kind of why they are where they are as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's any way you look at it. Putting these lists are not easy. Putting them together, I don't think are
No, and
easy.
they're going to be controversial. And I actually
Yeah.
liked the controversial. I knew that a Chuba Hubbard pick would be controversial. Most people are like, you just picked the Panthers player. Are you fucking insane? And I'm just like, no, I'm not totally insane, but it's going to get someone talking about it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
truly believe that he's doing the best for his offense.
Yeah. You're not putting them on there just for the sake of it. There's reasons behind it. So.
There's guys that I left off this list, the same as, and we should ask Nick that same question. But there's guys that I left off my list that I don't know I really struggle with, and people will probably get up in arms about. Nick won't get so much up in arms about it, but I left Jordan Mason off, even though he's got the second most rushing yards in the league behind Derrick Henry now. But I feel like, as we've talked about and we've joked about, that the 49ers true system isn't actually QB, as everyone keeps stating all the time. It's actually RB, and it's running back. And we've already proven that you can chuck anybody else into there, and they're gonna achieve to some point. So I don't feel like Mason. I feel like Mason's yards are a product of the team, not a product of Jordan Mason. I left Saquon Barkley out. I really struggled with Saquon Barkley. I feel like he's doing the most in that Philadelphia offense right now, but I think that's a product of how bad that offense is firing. It's not necessarily, again, he's not leading that team. He's not pushing that team forward. I just feel like he's doing his job, but the rest aren't doing their job. So the offense doesn't really fire. So
Yeah. Well, it would help if the coach spent more time coaching and not yelling at fans.
true.
But,
Even when winning. Even when winning.
yeah.
Even
Um,
when winning.
Yeah. So I left him out as well. So he was another one I struggled with, but I had that idea, that metric, and that way I wanted to view that, and that's sort of where I went with that one. Nick, are there guys that you just left out of those wide receiver rankings that you struggled with?
Yeah, like I said, so I had the coin flip between Lazard and Mike Evans, so I was going to go with Mike Evans as the other one. And then I suppose it wasn't really another guy I had sort of thought about, only because he's sort of really become a focal point in such a team that's been so bad. And it was actually going to be Brian Thomas Jr. For how badly they've struggled sort of across the board. And he's really become the clear number one target for Trevor Lawrence. So was thinking about him as well. I also thought potentially maybe Stephon Diggs, now that he's sort of getting that number one receiver treatment now. But definitely Mike Evans was the other one. And then the other one I had for sure looked at was Brian Thomas.
Do you know something interesting about receiving stats when you look up just the receiving stats? Is if you sort of put everything by receptions, so the most amount of receptions, your list looks great. You got Godwin, Wilson, London, Diggs are all at the top of receptions. There's a tight end in the top 10 for the most receptions in the league. He sits 15th for most yards in the league, and he sits at way down the list on TDs because he hasn't scored that many TDs. But Brock Bowers has more receptions than most of the wide receivers in the league so far.
Yeah.
And if you go by TDs on receptions, on receiving TDs, George Kittle is number 3.
Wow. Okay.
So this tight end season out there in the receiving cause right now.
Oh no, hang on. Kittle's got 5. So number 1.
So third. No, he's equal first, basically. He's got 5, along with Chris Godwin and Ja'Marr Chase. He's equal first, but you come off it with catch percentages and receptions is sort of what puts him down the list. When you list it out, you grade it in order. All right. That's the top 10s. QBs, wide receivers, RBs. As I said, go to our socials to find the whole list. We would love to hear your thoughts on those lists, and any guys that you feel deserve to be in any one of those top 10s, or maybe guys that don't necessarily deserve to be in there that we put in there. We would love to hear your thoughts, so please just check out the G'day Gridiron socials at those links on the link tree. And yeah, it'd be great to hear from you. It's been another great episode, boys, and thank you very much to everybody for joining us for this one, for Week 7 previews. On behalf of myself, Nick and Brad, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for checking everything out and listening to us. And we hope that you'll join us again on the other side of Week 7.
The Gday Gridiron podcast is brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, a network of gridiron content made by Australians for Australians. Check out our other programs, the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show, No Huddle Dynasty, and Pastry Press NFL. And don't forget to like and follow us and the whole of the Aussie Gridiron Network on Instagram, Facebook, and Pastry Press on YouTube.